Let us offer our consecration to the Lord. Lord, we offer up to you this day, and we ask that your name be glorified in all that we do. We ask that you know, love, and serve, that we may know, love, and serve you. We ask that we may understand your call, as we see in today's first reading, and we ask that we may become the signs of the presence of the Lord, and we ask this through Christ our Lord. Well, today is Wednesday. We're looking at the second chapter of Genesis. Now, in case you may not know this, there are two creation stories in the Bible. It's not just one, there are two. And so as we look at the story of the creation, we understand what I was saying yesterday, that one of the major messages here is that there is no moon god, there's no sun god, there's no earth god, there's no sea god, there's no river god, etc., 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 etc. There is the one God. And this is the message the Jews will bring to the whole world. Remember that powerful message, I'd say, that's that prophecy that's come true, that there will come a day that all the kingdoms of the earth will worship the God of the Jews. I want you to think how serious that is. Because we can look at that and say, well, yeah, that's happened. Okay, yeah, I've been, no. Back then, that would have been actually so much of a radical statement. There've been fights over that one. There would be. Why? Because what are you saying? That the gods of your country, right, the Egyptians are going to worship the God of the Jews. Oh, really? The Egyptians are going to say, oh, really? This is back then, not today. Oh, really? We're going to worship their gods. Well, I'm sorry. We are the superior culture and we have the superior gods. You can see how intense a statement that would be. And yet the Jews have the message, who at the time are called the Hebrews. The Hebrews have the message, and the message is there is one God. And we're looking at the story today where we see that God creates the human being. And why does God create the human being? God creates, as it says, man out of dust of the ground and brings him to life in order to care for the earth and the garden and everything else. Now, if you have a chance, for those of you who are listening in Boston, one of my favorite places on the whole earth happens to be the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. And if you go to the Museum of Fine Arts, which I'd highly, highly recommend to you, I'm a member. If you go to the Museum of Fine Arts, I think it's on the first floor, and there's an American art section, or it might be a European. You're going to see why this is kind of confusing. On the first floor. And if you go in there, I think it's actually, I could be wrong, but right off of where you can see the pottery from Paul Revere. The pottery, I'm sorry, silversmith. He was a silversmith. So anyway, a silver from Paul Revere. So then you turn right and go into a gallery, and there is this beautiful painting, I think, I could be wrong, is done by Jonathan Singleton Copley, who was a whole different story altogether. I'll explain that. And he created this beautiful painting. Anyway, if it's not him, but somebody created this beautiful painting of the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve being cast out of the Garden of Eden. And you can see this fine line between the lush beauty of the Garden of Eden and then the scary darkness, animals, etc., that are hostile outside of the Garden of Eden. It's fascinating. It's a really beautiful painting. Now, one of the reasons why I say there's kind of confusion as to whether it's in the American section or the European section, I suppose it would be the European section. Jonathan Singleton Copley is the person for whom we name Copley Square. Now, someone once told me a long time it's actually Copley Square, whatever. But anyway, it's where the library, the Boston Public Library, is the older wing of the Boston Public Library, which, by the way, that and there is a hotel right to the right of it. I believe it's the Copley Square Hotel. We're the Vatican in Pink Panther Troop. In case you didn't know that. I actually walked into the library one time. I was going to get coffee at the coffee shop, and there's a guy dressed as a cardinal sitting in an empty room, and I went, "You're one of the actors," because they were filming upstairs. He says, "Yes, I am, just waiting for my scene." But that was the Vatican in with Steve Martin, Pink Panther 2. But in any case, it's Copley Square. Well, I always thought that Jonathan Singleton Copley must have been this wonderful patriot. Well, he wasn't. His father-in-law owned the tea that the colonists threw into the harbor. And he was so angry that happened, he went back to England. So part of his life is here in the United States, and the rest of his life never went back to the colonies again, was in England. And so I do believe, I'm not sure if he painted it. They have a whole section of his painting. I think he did. So the question is it American art or European art? I don't know. But it's a beautiful painting that shows the stark difference between what God created in the Garden of Eden and what is outside, which God also created outside the Garden of Eden. And if you have a chance to check it out, please do. So that's what we're talking about today, is God created Adam. We're not there at the temptation yet, but God creates Adam to care for the plants and the animals. Remember, he's called to name the plants and the animals. And so we see that that's one of the reasons God created Adam. And we see that in today's reading. Now, do keep in mind, you can see today's reading. I don't read them. You can see today's reading yourself on your favorite daily missal, and we'll talk about that on the other side of the break. You're listening to St. Anthony Overnight from St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, right here on WEZE. We'll be right back right after this. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out catholictv.com. And don't forget our own website, CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com, where you can check with, you can listen to our program. You can connect to the various podcast platforms that we're on, and you can connect to the parish, and you can donate to the show, and you can send us feedback and do all those things. You can call us, as you heard the phone number, to do all those things over there. So anyway, here we are, and if you're looking at your favorite daily missal, which could be bible.usccb.org, it could be Magnificat, it could be the Word Among Us, among maybe other missals that are out there, and there's also the bound version of the entire year in a missal, actually 2 years in the daily missal. You can do that as well. But anyway, so if you look, you're going to see the story where we see God created the human being. He created man, specifically Adam. And Adam, according to Strong's Concordance, actually means man. So it wasn't specifically his name that, and I don't think it says in the Bible that he created man and named him Adam. It doesn't say that in the Bible, but it basically means that he created man, and we can see that he created Adam as man. So we say that can get really technical, and we don't have enough time to get into the technicalities, but basically that's what it means. So Adam is also given that famous instruction, which we see at the end of today's first reading, where he can eat of all the trees of the garden, but he cannot eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's an interesting thing, and it says if he does, he will die. We're going to actually see that, obviously, in the temptation, but there's a lot that really needs to be understood within that. Always keep in mind pure logic, and pure logic will say, if Adam eats of the tree, he will die. there is nothing in that sentence that says he will die immediately. Do you understand that? And that's where the temptation can come in to say, wow, it's kind of like, maybe a good example is, the story of Madame Curie, and there was a horrible story of someone who brought home some radium to his children. Now, if someone said to this man, I think it was in South America, someone said to this man, if you bring that toy to your children, that radium that they use as a toy, they will die. And he brings it to them, and they play with it, and they're fine for a while, but they don't die right away. I think they died a few days later, but from radiation poisoning. But do you see that understanding that the logic, if you look at everything just exactly what it says, which is what you learn in logic, is it doesn't say you will die immediately. It says you will die. And that's something that the devil works with. And we can see that in time. But that's one of the things to look at. What does the text actually say? And it says, if you eat from the garden, from the tree of good and evil, you will die. But it doesn't say you will die immediately. It's not poison fruit. It's fruit that is bigger than you are capable of understanding, which we talked about a couple days ago. In any case, we will be back tomorrow with the next in our discussion of the first reading this week. As we do, I usually pick the first reading because that's brings a story together and everything else. But we'll talk more about that tomorrow. In the meantime, have yourself a blessed day. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation to the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.